I just have another question.
Yes,
You
go ahead.
just mentioned that in front of Allah, a male and a female, they are equal. But there is a hadith in which Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned that a woman's religious responsibility is half of that of a man, and so is her intelligence.
He doesn't say it's half. He says it's deficient. It's naqisat. This is the hadith of Sa'id ibn what's his name? Khudayr, is it? Yeah, in Sahih Muslim, where he says when the Prophet Muhammad sallam, he stated, you know, that women are naqisat wa aql wa din. Question is it talking about specific women, or is talking about those ones he was talking about, some women that are not good to them? Because he mentions in this particular hadith the ones that yakfurna al-ashir, that they're ungrateful to their husbands. And in another hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stated that these types of women, this archetype of women, the ungrateful woman archetype, in ahsanta ilayha ad-dahra kullahu qulna ma ahsanta ilayya khayran qat. You know, if you try and be so good to them, they will say you've never done anything good for me. So there is an archetype of an ungrateful woman who is, the Prophet refers to as yakfurna al-ashir, and they will be populating the hellfire because they are ingrates. There are particular women that in the home they don't show gratitude to their husbands or to their, generally even, they're ingrates. So these particular women are naqisatu aql wa din. Now, all women are naqisat din in the sense that they have days where they don't pray. Everyone knows that, okay? And they're not held to account for that because la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. That Allah does not hold to account more than it can handle. And in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran very explicitly mentions in many verses that the spiritual equality between men and women. إن الله لا يضيع عمل عامل منكم من ذكر أو أنثى بعضكم من بعض. That Allah mentions in the Quran in Surah Al-Imran that Allah does not let to waste any good deed of any of you who do good deeds from man or woman, and both of you are from one another. وإن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات and so on and so forth. Allah mentions in the Quran also the mu'mins, man and woman, the believers, man and woman, the praying ones, the man and woman, the charitable ones, the man and woman, والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات, and so on and so. أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما, that Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and great reward. So Allah was reprimanding these particular archetype of yakfurna's woman, that yakfurna ashir. The question is this an impulse which is generalized to the entire woman community? In other words, are all women naqisat aql and deen, or is it some women? Now you could interpret this hadith to say, no, it's actually those ones who yakfurna al-ashir, those ones who show ingratitude in the marriage. Or you could say, and this seems to be the opinion of the vast majority of those who exegeted this particular hadith, that all women have a naqs, or a lesser ability in aql. Now what is aql? There is a difference between aql and ilm. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions in the Quran, chapter number 58, يَرْفَعَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. That Allah, he raises among you those who have believed among you and the ones who have been given knowledge in degrees. So knowledge is the thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. That Allah, in the Quran, it states that only the ones who are truly have ilm are the ones who truly believe Allah. That Allah raises in ranks those who have knowledge, etc., etc. الدنيا ملعونة والملعون ما فيها إلا ذكر الله وعالم ومتعلم. Hadith, where the whole world is cursed except for, you know, the alim and the one who's. So the ilm in Islam is praised highly, and there's nothing in the religion of Islam to indicate that men have a higher ability or propensity to have more knowledge than women. But there is definitely something, and this hadith, it could be used as an evidence to indicate they have more aql. Now, what does the word aql mean? The word aql comes from the Arabic word iqal. And the iqal is literally the thing that people put around their head. Have you ever seen this kind of? And basically in the animal, in the horse or something like that, it's the thing which you control the horse, whether it goes left or right. So this is aql. The opposite of it is jahl. And jahl is not just ignorance. That's false. Jahl is a lack of ability to control your emotions. This hadith, therefore, is saying that simply men, for the most part, are less emotionally driven than women. Now, this might sound controversial, but I actually done a particular, study, my own kind of social experiment, where I picked up the words of Simone de Beauvoir in her book, The Second Sex. And she actually states this very candidly in her book, in the chapter number 2 of biology, where she states that women are more emotional than men. She used almost exactly the same language, and she even went into detail about how and why women are more emotional than men.
You need to explain who she is, though.
Simone de Beauvoir is one of the founding mothers of the second wave feminist movement. She said this, and no feminist disagreed with her on this matter. The fact of the matter is, if someone wants to come into the sphere of psychology and say that there are no physiological or psychological differences, or indeed any biological difference or anatomical difference between men and women, this will be they'll be made a laughing stock. This is ridiculous. In fact, study after study after study has shown us of the material biological differences between men and women. I remember being in school, even when I was doing my A-levels, some maybe 10 years ago now, and there was a study we had to go through, Maguire, a woman who's called Maguire, who did the study of the hippocampus region in the brain. And she basically got these people, these men, before they did something called the Knowledge, which is like a course that they do in London for the black cab. And they went under MRIs. Everyone went under MRIs, and they checked their brain, the gray matter in their brains. So they checked before and after in the hippocampus region. And what she found, which is interesting, was that almost all of the people in that study increased in gray matter in the hippocampus region after the 18-month knowledge training that they'd done. Now, having said that, one of the findings of the study, and by the way, Maguire is a woman, so you can't, it's men doing the study and all this kind of nonsense. Maguire's a woman, yeah? She came to the conclusion that men have more gray matter in the hippocampus as standard than women do. Now, this question of who's better at driving, men or women, who's better at spatial awareness, men or women, is there anything that we have as biological, medical evidence to suggest that men are actually better at spatial awareness than women? The answer is yes. Now, whether you want to interpret that as therefore men are better than women or therefore they are not, that's something which is interpretive. I'm not saying one or the other. But what I am saying is that there are some hard facts which seem to show us good evidence. There's some good evidence there that there are some differences which may affect behavior. And we know this for a fact is the case when you have different hormones in your body. Testosterone and estrogen are two very different hormones. Get a woman, okay, who has an estrogen count of I don't know what, yeah? A woman's, depending on how you measure it, has like almost a tenth of the amount of testosterone as a man. You give woman testosterone, yeah, give her HGH, human growth hormone, or something like this, right? Just give her human growth hormone and see what she does in 2 weeks, 4 weeks. See if her behavior changes. See if her disposition changes. Of course, it will be the case that it does. Even her voice may change. The muscle tissue will change, and so on and so forth. So these are straight facts that people don't want to admit. And so, yes, we're not really shy to admit that the majority opinion is that in Islam, there seems to be evidence to suggest that men have more emotional control than women. And this may be the case in some areas and not in others. For example, an area where women have more emotional control than men is there are two clear areas that you can see with the data and sociology very easily. Number one is sexual desire. And that's why you'll find that that's alluded to in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about who should lower their gaze. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, and tell to the believing men that they should lower their gaze. And then he talks about the woman, okay? Because there's a special catering for the weakness of man. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانَ ضَعِيفًا. The Quran states the man has been created weak. So yes, man is more impulsive, more irrational when it comes to sexual desire, and therefore the Sharia has come and spoken to the man in that certain way. That's why when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he speaks and he reprimands a person who shares their sexual secrets, he says rajulun. He mentions the word man, by the way. He doesn't mention the word woman. Because sexual desire and sharing and boasting about sexual would seem to be more a crime that man would commit. Likewise, aggressivity and criminal attitudes and killing. Who does that more, men or women? Men do that more. They are more. And so therefore women are less, 95% of people that go into for murder in most countries are men. What kind of statistic would one want in order to really prove that men are more aggressive than women? Something like that is huge. So in general, therefore, we say that we have nothing to, what is the point of contention? We say, yes, there are certain emotions men can control better than women, and that can help them in everyday life. It can help them with certain circumstances, and that would seem to be the general rule. Certain other emotions like aggressivity and sexual desire, women would seem to be more in control over because of their hormonal structure and their physiological structure. And this is indicated in the Hadith, and I don't think there's anything contentious about that from a scientific perspective at all. What do you think, my friend, before we continue?
Yeah. So, you raised some very good points.
Let's just see what she says
Oh,
first.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. It makes sense.
Oh, that's nice. That's good. Do you want to add to that?
No, I myself study psychology, so I know all these things.
Oh, fantastic. So I don't have to try and convince you.
Yeah. So I was just going to
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I was just going to recommend Fifth Wave Feminism. Hijab's written a book, and you get a very interesting. I mean, it's a little bit it's a little bit on the deep end, but you still understand that when it comes to the different waves of feminist ideologies, none of them actually deny the biological differences between men and women. In fact, if anything, their arguments are premised on the fact that they are disadvantaged biologically, therefore they should be advantaged sociologically. And I think that's why the way that Hijab explained that particular narration, if anything, we're taught in Islam to, treat women in a way that is more merciful than, say, a capitalistic society, right? So, for example, we know of the narration of the Prophet ﷺ where he speaks about women and orphans, and he categorizes them as being the same, as being vulnerable, right? And
in fact, sorry, just to add to that, the ayah in the Quran says this. It says, وَيَسْتَفْتُونَكَ عَنِ النِّسَاءِ قُلِ اللَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِيهِنَّ وَمَا يُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ فِي يَتَامَى النِّسَاءِ. So, in fact, Allah says they ask you about women.
Yeah.
This is in chapter 4 of the Quran. I don't know if it's verse 120 something, right? They ask you about women. يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ عَنِ النِّسَاءِ. Allah will tell you about the women, and then he says, and he will also tell you about another group of people, which are the orphans, like you said.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about the weakened situation and how you have to be merciful with them and so on.
Yeah.
So this idea of mercy is even in the Quran.
And also some other things that they are, and this is not, and again, it's sad that today we can't state the Islamic position without having to actually show that Western academics or somebody else has come to the same conclusion.
Yes.
And the reason why we do that is to safeguard us from claims of misogyny or sexism and stuff like this. So I'm going to do the same thing.
Right.
I'm going to give a Quranic paradigm,
Yes.
an Islamic paradigm, but I'll have to explain it within a Western context to safeguard myself, right? So one of the things that feminist philosophers have actually spoken about is that prostitution, the sex industry, the pornographic industry, and any of these exploitive industries, they basically attack women and they subjugate women and humiliate women and objectify women, and they pick on women. This is very interesting. This is according to the feminist philosophers themselves. They
like Andrea Dworkin and so. Yeah, I've seen this.
There's another one, Catherine. I've forgotten what her name is. Catherine. It's actually in the lecture.
Not McKinnon, no.
McKinnon. Yeah, that's
these are radical feminists, by the way.
And what she basically speaks about is that pornography basically being a way of vulnerable, basically women being exploited and so on and so forth. So the thing is, and look again, I don't want to say this in a way that somebody takes this clip out of context and just goes to town with it. A woman that has a strong family bond in which she has a brother, a father, a cousin, these people are way less likely to get into these horrible industries. And Islam has this concept of guarding the woman, being a protector for the woman. And it's very interesting when we look at, for example, they're making girls look like that woman Kim Kardashian, right? Like they're popularizing her and they're doing these types of things. However, the sad thing is, and someone pointed this out, this wasn't me, I think it's a woman who pointed this out on Twitter or one of these things, that this woman, Kim, she's walking around, but she has big bodyguards. She has men who are there to protect her. But when it comes to the idea in Islam, right, that, okay, so a woman is, no, she doesn't need protection.
Wasn't she married to Jay-Z or something like that?
I don't know who she was married to, but
why isn't he there protecting her?
But it's very interesting, and also this idea that feminists have about the inequality, that women need protection because of XYZ, and that's why they're trying to get protection for the women. However, and this is again, I'm not trying to put people down, but they still need the feminist movement and even the radicals. They need the men to buy into it.
Yeah, of course.
Why? Because they know that essentially, unless you get that tazkiyah, unless you get that approval, then in a way it's kind of superfluous. So look, Islam's view that men are the protectors. It's not in a way to disempower the woman. Who do you protect? You protect a king. You protect a royalty. Do you protect a slave or a peasant? No. So Islam is there to empower the woman by telling her you have protection. But what they've done is the feminists have turned it on its head and have made it oppressive. The idea of man being the guardian of a woman is oppressive. So, ultimately, even though hijab, you gave a brilliant explanation of that narration, sadly, we are having to contextualize it within the Western framework, because even Muslim women themselves, not all of them, but some Muslim women have been so affected by Western feministic ideologies that they won't find these ideas palatable unless they're cushioned within this Western sort of language.
That's a really good point. I think this is a problem. I think this shows lack of submission, to be honest. And a lot of the people that read these kinds of, I'm not saying that our guest, mashallah, she was very, very
no, mashallah, very
reasonable. But I'm saying that there are some women that, to be honest with you, not just women, but some men as well, that they challenge Islam. And let me tell you something about this, because I really have suffered with these people. I have suffered with these people, honestly. These people, there are some.
Didn't you end up in hospital when you were refuting them?
One time, I just thinking about it and felt sick about what they were saying, because honestly, when I speak to these people, right, and when I say these people, who am I talking about? I'm talking about Muslims, so-called Muslims. I will say so-called Muslims, right, who have come to the conclusion that certain verses of the Quran should not be there, or that they are outdated, or something like this. And they will challenge verses, precepts, and qawati' of the Quran and the Sunnah, okay, and with the language of feminism. And for all intents and purposes, they're committing kufr akbar. They're committing the major disbelief. They are. And they still have the audacity to challenge people, and we feel like we need to be on the back foot all the time. And I say this, we will do our job in telling you the most convincing thing based on the paradigm that you guys believe in, or that you're most convinced with. But the problem is not ours at the end of the day. The problem is yours. Not yours, but the person who believes in these kind of things. The one who reads Surah An-Nisa, the one who watches, reads the Hadith of the Prophet and the polygamy and, whatever it may be, that he can marry, can divorce in a different way that woman can, or they can marry a Jew or a Christian, or that, or whatever differences exist, or that she has to wear the hijab or the abaya. All of these things that are continually being talked about, the differences, the notable differences between sexes, and you are uncomfortable with these things, and you in your mind actually think that they're oppressive. The problem is with you, because if you really believe this was a book from God, the all-knowing, the all-wise, you wouldn't have this question. We have to do all this cushioning for you and helping and scaffolding for you. But the truth is, if you come with arrogance, then you know what, to be honest, then I will say to you, you're a disbeliever. You are a disbeliever. Because you come and saying, oh, the Quran shouldn't put this in, then you know what? That's different from someone coming and saying, look, I have a doubt. If you have a doubt, you're staying within the fold of Islam. You're still, but if you come and say, I don't believe that this should be in the Quran, like this disbelieving woman, her name is Amina Wadud. She's a kafir, you know. She said that when I looked at 434, I had a conscientious gap, and I don't believe in this verse. Okay, we don't. Then you have left Islam. أفتؤمنون ببعض الكتاب وتكفرون ببعض فما جزاء ما يفعل ذلك منكم إلا خزي في الحياة الدنيا ويوم القيامة يردون إلى أشد العذاب وما الله بغافل عما كانوا يعملون. You know, do you believe in parts of the book and disbelieve in other parts of the book? This is not a joke. You know, Allah will humiliate you on the day of judgment, etc. You can't pick and choose what you want from this religion. That's the bottom line. If you're coming in and saying, well, I don't like this idea that a man is the protector and maintainer of the woman. I don't like this idea. What do you mean you don't like this idea? Who are you to say I don't like this idea? Who are you to challenge the authority of Allah Jalla wa Ala? You must not believe that Muhammad was a true prophet then. That's what the end result is. If you're saying that these verses are just, then you must believe that this man Muhammad, who came in the 7th century, was a fake, was a charlatan. That's what you believe. Because if you truly believed he was a true prophet, you would not challenge those verses with arrogance, and in fact have the audacity to come forward and say these verses should not be there, or I have a conscientious gap, or they should not. This is kufr akbar yakhruj sahibu min al-millah. This is something which takes you out of the fold of Islam. There's no joke anymore. We're not playing games. We're not helping. There's a difference between apologetics and for doubts, and someone who come and challenge the Quran and Sunnah and think that they, in the name of feminism and women's rights. What do you mean feminism and women's rights? That you come and you say, well, you shouldn't be able to this, and I should be able to have equality, and you're using the language of the colonizer, because you have been colonized, and you think you're a clever person coming with these things and destroying homes and families, because you don't believe in ta'ah lizawj, you don't believe in obedience, you don't believe in any such concept. You make a mockery, even though even that concept itself is in the Quran. فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا. It's ta'ah in the Quran. What do you mean you don't believe in hierarchies, in the managerial hierarchies within the home? I don't believe in, no, we're the same. Wallahi, you're not the same. And if there was a burglar that came into the house, you'll be the first one to run like a coward. Don't talk like you're like a man. You can't fight a man. You can't be a man. Those women that think, the first time I was speaking to a woman before I got married the first time, and for marriage and stuff like that. And the moment she said to me, I said, this is a true story, yeah? I was in university at that time. And I said, she just come up and she said something like, I said, what would you do if a burglar came? I said, she goes, I'll deal with it. You can go call the police. Bro, I'm a 6'6", 270-pound man. And you are a nobody compared to me. And if I wanted to, if me and you were in the same place and I'll close the doors, I could take your life. I have the ability to take your life. Don't come and talk to me about I'm going to be calling the police and you're going to be fighting the guy. Don't talk like that. Do you understand? Yeah, certain people like that, they need to understand that when the proverbial, like Hamza says, hits the fan, that this is a real talk. When the war happens, then you're going to need the best man to be on the front line. Okay. When the fire happens, you're going to need the fastest man to go get your kid from the That's thing. It. And so if you're coming to me with equality, this and that, and absolute equality, like Ngozi said in her book, The Communist Manifesto, she said everything should be equal except for breastfeeding. What should it also be equal in war? Should it also be equal in when there's a situation of amn or khawf, as the Quran states? No, it's not. And so this is a false paradigm that has been forced upon us by these colonial white colonial feminists who have forced this paradigm on us. And unfortunately, just like a lot of our countries were colonized, a lot of our people are colonized now. Absolutely.
And you really made a very important point when it comes to warfare. Now, I've been doing some research in terms of evolutionary warfare as part of my sort of research.
Yeah, this is a good point.
And what's very interesting, right, is that, and again, I'm saying this within the Western context of what academia is saying, right? I'm not saying I agree with it, I disagree with it.
Yeah.
Women are preferred not to be the leaders during times of difficulty, security issues, national security issues, or warfare, or any of these types of situations. Even men who have feminine features, I'm not going to go into what was meant by that, even they would not be preferred. What would be preferred is actually somebody who looks intimidating, somebody who is definitely male, right? Why is that?
I mean, look at America. They've never bloody voted in a woman in history, even though they have been. Look at Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and also
women who are voting for Trump.
Yeah, and also, by the way, some people use outliners to try and make a point. So they'll say something like Margaret Thatcher, but we can deal with that because there's some important points here. Now, the important thing to actually note is that when it comes to a war between a man, between one group of people and another group of people, what you actually have, and again, I'm just citing the studies. I'm not saying this is my opinion. What the studies are saying is basically this: women have the ability to tend and befriend, right? And they have the ability to actually switch allegiances to the other tribe, to switch allegiances post-war, to actually to accommodate assimilation, right? And the man actually has the ability to have this in-group bias, right? And to actually have this protectionism and have this national.
This is in your reading.
This is studies. These are studies that you can actually get.
Can you give us some names though?
So, for example, you can look at the book is called Mismatch. Okay. I've forgotten the author, but anything to evolutionary psychology. Oh, there you go. Here's some good names, right?
Yeah.
So John Tooby and Leda Cosmides. So these are two. It's a husband and wife. They've written about sex differences. They've written about during times of warfare. Richard Wrangham, he's written about military incompetence being adaptive. So. These are just some names that just came out of the top of my head. But what these people actually do is they look at the sex differences during warfare, and there is immense amount of differences. So you can't say a woman is going to be the same as a man during warfare, because one of the things that has been found is that a woman would be hesitant in warfare. She would be hesitant to actually go into confrontation. And some people have used this they've used a valid point for an invalid conclusion. They've said, well, if women are in charge, that would basically mean the whole world would be a lot more peaceful. Well, firstly, here's the point. Women being in charge of, say, the entire world, if every single leader was a woman, would there be less wars? Yes. But hypothetically, can it ever be the case that all of the leaders in the world are women? No, because what happens naturally is the men are more aggressive, the men are more dominating, and the men normally go up the hierarchy. So if someone does select a woman to be the leader of a particular tribe, and the other tribes are hostile, that's the end of your lineage. That's the end of your whole society, because she will not be able to make those particular types of decisions. And the other thing to actually keep in mind is that the qualities of a woman, when it comes to certain decisions, when it comes to child rearing, when it comes to these things which the feminists actually downplay, but they are the, as Imam Jawzi said, that women are all of society because they're half of society which give birth to the other half. These absolutely crucial functions men cannot do. Like you leave a man, we're both fathers here, you leave a man with the kids for a few hours and the wife goes out, you come back, did you feed the kids? Oh, I forgot to. This happened to me the other day. My wife said, did you feed them? I was like, oh, I didn't. Like my wife would be like, okay, are they hungry? Are they playing? Are they doing this? Are they doing that?
Let me just add one thing, just for the sake of, adding texture to what you've said. Right? To be fair, the idea of women being leaders, I don't think it's a categorical in the Islamic narrative, and I'll tell you why. Right?
Yeah, but I was giving the in warfare the evolution paradigm.
Even in warfare. Let me explain why. I'll give you the evidence as well. In Surah Al-Naml, actually Surah Al-Qasas, chapter 28 of the Quran, the idea of Sheba was actually a queen, as we know, and she was in charge in the Quranic paradigm. And in fact, in the Quran, when she was in charge when there was a threat of war. And there was a threat of war from Sulaiman alayhi salam. And and in fact, I've been thinking about this quite deeply. I'll tell you something, right? Chapter 27 is Surah Al-Naml, chapter 28 is Surah Al-Qasas. Chapter 27, it describes Fir'aun's rulership and his authority as a leader. And it describes it in a very negative manner. And in fact, his actual leadership is described because of his pomp and because of his arrogance in a negative way. The very next surah, and this is a thing that the Quran does quite often, like the next surah, it juxtaposes what's in the previous surah. You have now Sheba, who's also a leader, but she was a very wise leader. So for example, when Sulaiman sent the letter, and it said in it, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah ta'alu alayya wa tuni muslimin, don't become arrogant upon me and come Muslims. So she went to her people, she went to the chiefs of her, and they were saying, just tell us whatever you want. They said, Inna ulu ba'sin wa inna ulu quwwatin wa ba'sin shadidin wal amru ilayki fanzuri madha ta'murin. So tell us what you want us to do, right?
We're strong people.
Right. Now, bear in mind, there's two things here. In the previous surah, Fir'aun was asking his malak what to do. In this surah, Sheba, who's a queen, a woman, right? She's telling her she is giving advice to her malak. She's giving advice to her chiefs. So if Fir'aun is asking, what should we do? And then they're telling him, okay, do this, do that, and he's giving him bad advice, and he's taking the bad advice, and it's advice of aggression. Whereas what she says is, إِنَّ الْمُلُوكَ إِذَا دَخَلُوا قَرْيَةً أَفْسَدُوهَا وَجَعَلُوا أَعِزَّةَ أَهْلِهَا أَذِلَّ وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ. That when the kings come into a place, they destroy it, and they make the most high people the most low, and they will do the same thing for us. وَإِنِّي مُرْسِلَةٌ هِدَايَةٍ. I'm going to send a gift to Sulaiman, blah, blah, blah. And then the gift came to him, and then afterwards she was invited to come, and then a war was basically diffused for all intents and purposes. The idea, therefore, I want to be the reason why I've interrupted here and said this, to textualize this a little bit, I don't think the Islamic narrative necessarily depicts women leaders as always ineffectual. I think sometimes you need a woman, and sometimes you need a man. Sometimes a woman will be more effective, and sometimes a man will be more effective. But the truth of the matter is this, okay? The majority of prophets in Islam were men. This is a fact.
Isn't the most widespread opinion
some
that
scholars say all of them,
all
yeah.
of them, yeah.
Some scholars say no, Hawa was a prophet and Maryam was a prophet and Moses' mum was a prophet. That is the opinion of, I think, As-Suyuti. And they say that because of the word wahi, wa awhayna ila ummi Musa and al-da'i. We have sent down to the mother of awhayna, and the same words are used to because But anyway, this is that some scholars say this and some scholars say that. I'm not here to do tarjih, right?
Yeah.
The vast majority of prophets, if not all of them, were men. There's a reason for that. Okay, the reason is simply because the type of societies that existed aforetime, for the most part, they would have been advantaged with a man being the leader, especially when part of the responsibility was generalship, like actual military generalship. And I do agree that military generalship, the advantage will be for the man, even though the exception to that rule is that a woman can sometimes make great and wise and aggressive and whatever decisions that also a man can make. So what we don't want is these people to use the exception to try and prove the rule, because the exception only disproves the rule. The exception actually only does the opposite. It proves the rule. It proves the rule. But it doesn't mean to say that women can't make good decisions in power. And it doesn't mean to say all the Islamic opinions are saying that women can't be in charge of provinces or countries or something like that. That's not. Some scholars say they can be. Absolutely. They say that this is for the Khilafah Amma and so on and so forth, for the general Khilafah, and not for the Wilaya or for the country or for the province. So in summary, therefore, I would say that there are some differences which are very much outlined in the Quranic and Islamic discourse, and we have to be comfortable with them. That would suggest to us that there are some fundamental differences we must respect. That's it, really, I think.
Yeah. So, what do you want to do in terms of time? It's 9:40 now.
I'll pray Maghrib, and then you pray, and then we'll do an hour.
We'll do an hour. One more hour after this.
1 more hour after this.
I mean, we've done 40 minutes, so it's up to you.
So we'll go until like 1 hour and 1 hour 15.
No worries.
Is that
all right? So you go.
I'll pray first.
You pray with the brother.
Yeah, and then you pray. Yeah.
Yep.
And then yeah.
Direction is this way.
Yeah. Okay. Go.
Thank you very much, sister, for your question. So I'm going to be moving.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful answer. Please say thank you to Brother Hijab.
Yes, he's listening. I learned a lot. That was a very good answer. Yeah, absolutely.
Same. Thank
Yes,
you so much.
You can. Do you know the?
Yeah.
Yeah.